The first part of our journey is to understand what sustainable development is, the meaning of sustainable development, which is a fuzzy word. Many people can think different things about sustainable development. It's a word which is used in a very fuzzy way, okay? If you think carefully, sustainability is a basic economic notion. What is income? How would you define income? Income, the basic notion of income are the fruits of something. We have a tree. Every year, hopefully, it produces some fruits, and this is income. So suppose that you have a salary, and then you have some money in your bank account or under the mattress, and then you have, for instance, your income is 350, and this is your salary. And then every month you spend 400, the spendings. How is that possible? The reason is that you use some money that you have under your bed. Okay? What is your income? How much is your income? Your income is 350. Why are you spending 400? Because you are using your capital, your stock. Okay? So what is the basic notion of income? What is the economic income? We have a very famous definition by Sir John Hicks. The purpose of income calculation in practical affairs is to give people an indication of the amount which they can consume without impoverishing themselves. So sustainable development is a lot about that. This definition was given by Hicks in 1939. And so income has a practical purpose, that is to serve as a guide for prudent conduct. I want to know how much can I spend every week, every day, without becoming poorer. Of course, if I am very rich, I can decide to consume my wealth. And this is legitimate. So what is important in income calculation is to understand whether we are consuming our wealth or are consuming the fruits of our wealth. Okay? For instance, suppose that you need to pass a lot of exams and you want to get very good mark. And maybe you start and you decide to study and do the exams of 10 exams. And then you study night and day and night. And then at the end you pass all the exams. But then you are so exhausted that you don't study for 1 year anymore, and then you don't pass any exams anymore. Okay? And this is a kind of bad calculation of efforts. So for instance, it is very difficult in real life to do proper calculations. Because sustainability, as we said, is about duration, lasting, something that has to last. And if you think to nuclear plants or to any industrial plant, very big industrial plant and maybe very polluting. And we have many examples of that. When we do the calculations, we calculate theoretically income. When we approve as a government a project, do we put into the calculation the amount of money, of resources that we need to use at the end of the life of the plants? The dismantling cost. You have a plant, we have a big fir, but then what will occur when the plant doesn't work anymore at the end of the life of the plant? Okay? And theoretically, we should take into account all the costs during the whole life of the production. In Italy, we have a lot of old plants that have been abandoned, and nobody pays for the cost of dismantling it. The state must pay for the cost of dismantling it, just because water is very polluted, and still the plant, even if it doesn't work, still pollute the water. Because it is not working, it is becoming more and more polluting. And the same is when we discuss the cost of the energy produced with nuclear plants. What is the cost of dismantling the plant after it finishes? So we can say, oh look, nuclear power is very cheap. It is not very cheap, nuclear power. It is very expensive if we consider all the costs. It is cheap if we consider only the current costs. Okay? So it is always very important to do appropriate accountancy, to make good calculation. Are we depleting our wealth? Are we, for instance, for studying, doing too much effort? And then we will get exhausted after? And this idea, I think, is very important in economics, and is, in a sense, very similar to the idea of sustainability. Are we getting only the fruits, or are we damaging the plant, the tree? What is our income? It is our spending, 400, or our salary, 350. So sustainable development is actually an economic meaning. This is another definition which, for many respects, is similar. Real income is a maximum that could be spent on consumption while leaving real wealth intact. If you read through the book, the two books, you will discover that there are some important differences. But at least they have the same idea of keeping the wealth. I have a wealth which produces fruits. So we need to care after our wealth, so that the fruits are kept also in the future. And of course, in some cases, in personal life, it is easy. From a public policy perspective, it is difficult, because we have to decide what has to be sustained. We have to do some choices. In some cases, we don't want that something will last forever. So this is legitimate. And this is very difficult because the citizens have different opinions. Men have different opinion from women. Is this forest to be kept or not? Who knows? There is no scientific rule. It is a political decision. Is it clear what I mean? Okay. Usually we have those 3 dimensions of sustainability, as you already said. We have economic, social, and environmental dimension. And the idea is to find a compromise between those 3 dimensions. And this is a very good representation from a policy perspective. What is the problem of this representation? What do you think about it? Do you like this representation of sustainability? Has this some problem? How many of you already saw this kind of, is aware of this representation? Please raise your hands. Okay. So what is wrong in this representation? What do you think about it? Actually, there is also a different representation, the pyramid, where institutions are also represented. So we have 4 dimensions of that. Yes?
Isn't politics part of the social?
Society, environment, and economy are at the same level. There are no functional relationship between them. There are goals. As we saw in the discussion before about women empowerment, we can understand that there is something which is hierarchically higher than something else. Of course, everything is connected, but so this is a standard representation. In the middle, we have sustainability. We need to have a compromise between all the needs and so on. So the idea is compromise. Some economic, some environmental, some societal issues. But for instance, going back to the issue before, education, women education. So women education perhaps is a prerequisite of getting a better position at work, isn't it? So this is another representation, this egg model. Natural environment and humans. Of course, the story is, so there is a story that the ecosystem and the people are happy, are fit, there is well-being only if nature and the ecosystem is okay. And actually, it is again from the United Nations and egg of sustainability. And what is the difference between the 2 representations? Sorry? No, because in this case, human society, nature, and economics are not at the same hierarchical level. What do we have usually in practice? In practice, we have economic system. The economic system is embedded in society. And this society is embedded in nature. I participated to a report about biodiversity and ecosystem services, which is called IPBES. And we discussed a lot about nature's benefits to people. One of the goals was to explain politicians that nature is useful to people. And this is actually a bit strange, no? Why should an international panel of scientists explain that nature is important? I think the reason is that people are not aware of that. For instance, I would like to sell my kidney, one of my kidney. Is this allowed? No. Why? And there is a very famous book in economics by Professor Mankiw, who had a Mankiw. Probably some of you have studied on the book of economics by Professor Mankiw, who says that unfortunately the law doesn't allow to sell organs. And the reason is that I have 2 kidneys, one is useless, another person has no kidneys, so I would like to sell my kidney to the other one, and this would be a Pareto improvement, because I will get better, because I will get the money in change for that, and the other one will get the kidney, and he will recover his health. And so, unfortunately, the law doesn't allow to sell kidneys. And so, economic and society, markets, free markets. Well, as economists, we say that free markets works and they are good and so on. But we forget that free markets are embedded in rules, in institutional rules, in customs and habits, in legal framings. But apparently we forgot that. We forgot that most our life is not about market exchange. And we forgot that the economic system lives within a society, within rules, within exchange of knowledge between society and economics. At the same time, we forgot that the society lives within an environment. We drink water. The issue is not that we need a compromise between employment and quality of water or whatever. The issue is about limits. The issue is that we have some limits. We have some limits to our welfare that come from nature. So this is why I said hierarchical dependence. In a rich country, we are used to say that the environment is a luxury good. Most of you comes from an economic degrees, and so you know what is a luxury good. Is a good that I would like to buy only when I'm rich enough. And this is the environment. But this idea is completely wrong. Because in many cases, if you are poor and you live out of the environment, you take the water for drinking, for all your basic uses from the river, and the river is polluted, then you will die. And there are a lot of cases about ecological conflicts about the quality of the environment, because the environment is life support. Okay? So I cannot say I can make a compromise between the environment and so on. In some cases, yes, we can say, but the environment is not only a recreational good. So I feel I would like to go to a forest and have a nice walk. Okay, perhaps this is an environment as a luxury good. But in most cases, the environment is also a matter of survival. To have clean air. So the egg of sustainability has this different representation, a representation where limits are explicitly introduced. Okay, and it is explicitly recognized that the economic system is not separated by society, but is embedded in society. And society is embedded in nature. And of course, for instance, you can, if you have, so the usual picture of the Pigouvian taxes, environmental taxes. Usually we say that this is a private marginal cost, this is the demand, but this is not the true picture because we have also social costs, externalities, and then we say, okay, if we have to take into account of externalities. And so this is optimal, this is quantity, this is the optimal quantity, this is the optimal price, so we have to levy a tax in order to shift upward the supply in order to get this quantity. But we don't know at all whether this quantity is consistent, is compatible with nature's need. Perhaps even this quantity will end up in a collapse. This is based on the consumer preferences. This is based on technology. This is based on consumer preferences. But actually, the environment tells us some limits. We can use this if, for instance, we can say, look, the environmental limit is this one. You cannot produce more than this quantity. And of course, this approach can be useful. But if we have ecological limits and we cannot produce more than this, just so as a theoretical example, of course a Pigouvian tax is irrelevant. So we have some degrees of freedom. For instance, if we have some gasoline in the tank of our car, we can decide where to go. But we cannot decide to drive for 1 month if there is not gasoline enough, for instance. So we have some degrees of freedom, but within the environmental limits and within the society limits, the societal limits. Okay? And this is about sustainability. Of course, as you know, many problems are global in nature. Climate change is a global problem. And it is very difficult to get all the nations cooperating in order to solve these global problems. And actually, there are some models that use the game theory. And as you will see, one reason for intergenerational conflict is discounting. But now I think we need to